I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CQM and 980 CGME. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com. Make sure you go to RealAgriculture.com and check out all of our news and information relative to the industry of agriculture. That's all we do. We focus on agriculture, and it is your one-stop shop. Make sure you subscribe to our emails by going to RealAgriculture.com/subscribe. Well, it's been a busy week, up and down temperature-wise, and I've been on the road. I spoke at a rancher event in just outside Calgary on Tuesday night. I was in Brandon, Manitoba on Wednesday, and this weekend I'm off to Commodity Classic in Denver, Colorado, which is going to be a huge meeting. I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about trade. Hey, by the way, today we're going to be talking about trade. We got a couple great guests. We'll be joined by the Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Daryl Harrison. He'll be joining us, obviously the Minister of Agriculture in Saskatchewan. He was down at that NASDA meeting in Washington, D.C., talking about the benefits of trade, obviously for the province of Saskatchewan and the U.S., but also Canada in general. We'll also talk to the Minister of Agriculture federally, Mr. Lawrence MacAulay, who was also down at the NASDA meeting, and that interview was from Tuesday. So we've got some good stuff there from a political front on the agricultural political side of the equation. We've also got time today for a product spotlight with Bryce Geisel. He is with Koch. And then we're also going to hear from Adam Pukalo, who is going to talk about farm succession. So questions to get farm succession moving. Looking forward to that as well on the program. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms as Real Agriculture. Or if you want, you can maybe call the Real Life feedback line. Why not? Call the line, drop me your take, and it leaves me a voicemail. You don't have to come on the radio live here on RealAg on the Weekend. Of course not. You can call 855-776-6147. It looks like at this point, as of recording this show, that we're going to have tariffs next week, March 4th, on Canadian goods going into the U.S. Very confusing. 1 minute there's tariffs, the next day there's not. What are the tariffs on? All goods, some goods, reciprocal in nature. At this point, who knows? It's very confusing. It's creating a lot of uncertainty, but not only in Canada, but also in the United States. It's that is not being covered enough in terms of the damage and some of the challenge that it is creating for American companies as well. Okay, let's get started with RealAg on the Weekend. We got Minister Harrison. It's now time to talk about agriculture and trade in the province of Saskatchewan. Joining us right now is the Minister of Agriculture in the province. It is Mr. Daryl Harrison. Minister Harrison, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Shaun. Thank you.
Hey, it's great to chat with you. I think it's the first time we have chatted as you as the Ag Minister. How are things going in the position? You enjoying it?
Yes, very much so. Ag is very important to the province. We have the best producers in the world. Myself being among that group, I really appreciate the value and the commitment that our producers have, not only to our province, but in the products they produce. So very much a critical industry here in the province, and it involves a lot of trade around the world. We need to expand any and all markets across the globe.
Yeah, and speaking of opening up those markets, you were down at the NASDA meeting this week in Washington, D.C. I guess explain the purpose of that trip.
Well, it was certainly, I was honored to be there, to be able to attend, even more honored to be able to present to the group. U.S. is an important trading partner, and these are some challenging times. We need to engage with our state representatives, and that's what that event was all about, the opportunity to meet face-to-face with the commissioners, directors, secretaries from all the U.S. states. We have large trading relationship with 27 of those U.S. states. So it was important to have that face-to-face. express our concerns around tariffs and the importance of Canada-U.S. trade. It does go back and forth. It's very important for us and them to have that understanding. And for the most part, all those U.S. states were very welcoming and very engaging on the importance of that same trade. So they understand. The ask was to get them to pass that along at a national level and have, hopefully have influence to avoid tariffs.
Do you have confidence that that is going to happen? And I guess we have not seen a lot of representatives at the state level or in D.C. step out publicly against some of the president's trade agenda, especially on the Republican side of the aisle for sure. Or is the ask to do this behind closed doors and push and move that way?
Yeah, certainly. Each and every effort in that regard is appreciated. But yes, most of it is done on a table to table basis, not so much out in the public. They'll take the opportunity when they can to push that importance of trade, tariff-free trade.
Yeah, did you mention, well, I would assume, you mentioned the importance of Saskatchewan potash to the American farmer.
Yes, and they're very aware of that importance, and that's a huge concern for their producers. That increases the cost, and tariffs overall are just going to drive up the price for producers, other stakeholders, but in the end, it's consumers on both sides of the border that are going to feel the effects of tariffs.
Yeah. So I guess how would you rate the effectiveness of the trip? Mission accomplished, or do you feel that there's still a lot of work to be done? What's kind of your thoughts in retrospect as you get back to Saskatchewan? Yeah,
no, it's certainly not done yet. The engagement down there was very good. From the NASDA group, it was very receptive. They wanted to hear our standpoint. I shared the video that the Premier put out there on how important the trade is back and forth, and they absolutely love the they showed the map of how our trade works, and it's all across the U.S. and it's very very important. They understood that engagement will continue. Relationships were developed. So as part of the NASDA meetings, the winter meetings, there was breakout sessions with the regional groups. So I was able to attend the Midwestern one, and it was great. They do completely understand that relationship, and the independence of the president is there, but they'll work their channels to get that point across, because it does impact them as much as it impacts us.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago we talked to Trade Minister Kading. He was off to Singapore. I think that next week you also made an overseas trip as well. Saskatchewan working hard here, the government, to try to diversify the markets and pay attention to what's going on in the U.S. and do that work to prevent some of those tariffs as much as possible, but also trying to make sure that the rest of the world knows about Saskatchewan products as well.
No, that's correct. We were over in India and UAE. We have trade offices in both those countries. The importance of those trade offices, the connections that we can maintain on an ongoing daily basis are paramount. Having our delegation there in person very much signals that relationship is strong. It's strong. We want to continue to grow that relationship. In India and UAE are both important destinations for our pulses, our peas and lentils specifically, but also canola and that as well. It's a growing market, and it's a market we want to maintain, but we also want to grow and expand. UAE is becoming a hub for that area of the world, and toured the port, the DP World port, and it's just astounding the amount of trade that happens through those ports. And we want to be a part of it. And having those trade offices there, it's 2 of 9, and we have to continue to grow markets in every corner of the world.
Yeah, well put. Hey, before we wrap up here, we're getting a little bit closer to 2025 seeding season in Saskatchewan. Probably a lot of producers well into calving. This is a busy time across the rural countryside in Saskatchewan.
Yes, most certainly. Everybody's still cleaning grain and looking forward to putting in the spring crop. I think our snow cover from border to border is very encouraging for soil moisture-wise. It's not going to carry the crop through to the grain bin, but it will be a good start. But everybody's looking forward to it, and it's upon us. Calving is upon us. Everybody's very optimistic at this point.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Well, Minister Harrison, thanks so much for joining us here today on RealAg on the Weekend. We greatly appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Shaun.
That was the Minister of Agriculture in Saskatchewan, the Honorable Daryl Harrison. We'll be right back here on RealAg on the Weekend right after this.
Get ahead of hard-to-kill weeds with the pre-emergent soil-active herbicides Volterra, EZ, and Fierce EZ from New Farm. Apply after spring thaw for up to 8 weeks of extended weed control this spring. Find out more about New Farm products at newfarm.ca.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The following is a paid product spotlight by Koch Agronomic Services. And welcome back to RealAg on the Weekend. Joining us right now for a product spotlight is Bryce Geisel. He is with Koch Agronomic Services based out of Saskatchewan. Hey, Bryce, how we doing?
Doing well. How about you today, Shaun?
Pretty good. As farmers are thinking about their main inputs here for spring, MP, and K, what else should they be considering?
No, absolutely, yeah. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, those are kind of the macronutrients, and that tends to be a lot of bandwidth is really focused on those because we put a lot of those nutrients down because the crop needs a lot of those nutrients to produce the grains. We got to make sure we're hitting those big numbers we're targeting with those macronutrients. But there is kind of a subset that we also have to think about too, and that's the micronutrients. And these are just needed in much smaller amounts. And I'm sure many farmers and agronomists and people who are listening have heard of these micronutrients before: boron, copper, zinc, manganese are some common ones, molybdenum, iron, chloride, nickel. They all fall in that micronutrient category. So they're kind of just as essential, but they're needed in much smaller amounts.
Why do we care about them? Why are they important? So give me the so what here.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I mentioned, they are essential just in smaller amounts, and they're required for all plant metabolism and function. So we think of root growth, shoot growth, especially early in the season, and then rapid growth are needed in there. Photosynthesis can't happen without micronutrients. Flowering and creating protein in the grain, all requires micronutrients. So the plant's pulling them from the soil, but again, it just needs them in much smaller amounts. A lot of those micronutrients, you only need like 200 grams per acre to grow your crop and hit your yields. We're used to 40 or 40 pounds or 120 pounds. Some big numbers with macros, but the micros, some are 200 grams, some are a little less, some are a little more, but it's typically kind of the grams that we need. And same as the micronutrients, we do have to think about those because when we take grain off, or if you're taking straw, hay, silage, you're going to be pulling those micronutrients out of the field as well. So we do have to think about making sure that we're having enough within our fields to make sure that we're going to hit those yield targets that those farmers and agronomists are aiming for.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the soil test. That's a critical component of this process.
Absolutely. Soil testing is always important. It gives you a good snapshot in time of kind of what you're dealing with. We kind of talked a little bit about with those macronutrients and understanding, okay, how many pounds of nitrate we have or phosphorus, and phosphorus is obviously a hot topic one because we know that is trended lower. And we can start to see some of the same things with those micronutrients where they're starting to trend lower. And we want to look at those numbers on that soil test and see how you're tracking on your micronutrients, because that's going to be a big part in trying to determine, where you're on the scale. Are we still in sufficiency? Do we have lots still there? Are we starting to get, losing a bit of that, getting deficiency standpoint? Because if we're getting down deficiency, now we're in a situation where we're probably going to have some yield limitations. We don't run into deficiency with micronutrients all the time, but it does happen here and there. And I've definitely seen some fields where we get in deficiency, and we really then have to figure out what is the strategy, because now you also have to make sure you have enough that you're not going to limit yield, but also to have enough that you're probably starting to build that up again.
For the farmers that are listening here, how do they know they're choosing the right product given their gaps?
For sure, there is a lot of different products out there, and choosing the right product really involves, what's going to be important for your operation. So there's a couple of different things that I kind of want to leave with people listening, just in terms of how to think about some products and some things to think about, and just kind of some different categories. The first one is distribution. So as I mentioned, the crop needs grams, not pounds. So as we think about that, it's really hard to spread grams across a whole field. We think about 200 grams per acre is not a lot of nutrient that's going down per acre. So you might want to use a product that, can help distribute that better. So I'll, put a plug in for Wolftrax DDP. And that kind of is a product that provides micronutrients that allows for that greater distribution across the whole field. And that allows those plants. So every plant that's in your field has a better opportunity to find those nutrients when it's getting established across the field.
Great stuff.
Another one, to think about would be availability. So that's going to be the availability of the micronutrient, kind of going back to the source of those micronutrients. And that's just, how that plant will, or when that plant will be able to access it. So again, kind of, Wolftrax DDP, it has multiple forms of the nutrient source. So one form is it's got a salt form, and that's going to be immediately available for those seedlings in those cold soils. And that's where we definitely notice, plants can really struggle, especially with those non-mobile nutrients. When those seedlings, you don't have much of a root establishment there. So if we can get something that's more of a salt form that's easily taken up by the crop at that time, but also has oxides too, and oxides are not immediately available. They have to become available, but they'll become available as those roots kind of get established in the field and be able for uptake as those plants really hit that rapidly growing part. So that's kind of the availability piece. Probably the last thing would be operational efficiency, because we know farmers don't have a lot of time to do a lot of extra applications on their field. We jam a lot into the summer, and there's a lot going on. And that's something too to think about, choosing a product that fits within your operation. One of the advantages of Wolftrax DDP again is that it is added to your fertilizer from your fertilizer dealer already. So you just take that with whatever macronutrient, whatever blend, starter blend, nitrogen that you might be bringing home. It gets added onto there. And then that just goes on with however you apply your fertilizer, whether it's through your air seeder, your broadcasting, or however it might be added, and you can do it the same way. And there's no extra application needed on the farm.
Okay, Bryce, if somebody has any questions, wants to get some recommendations, dive into some of those products a little bit deeper, how do they do that?
Absolutely. So if you want to learn more about Wolftrax DDP or any of the products from Koch Agronomic Services, you can definitely talk to your retail, your agronomist, or reach out to your Koch Agronomic Services rep. Or you can always go to kochagronomicservices.ca. So that's KOCH, agronomicservices.ca.
Great stuff. Hey, Bryce, thanks for joining us here for this product spotlight on RealAg on the Weekend.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back with more here of RealAg on the Weekend on 650 CKOM and 980 CJME. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
Excite Biotechnologies is a Canadian company providing made-in-Canada inoculants and biologicals. From nitrogen to phosphorus, let us help you find the best solution. Reach us at 1-855-XITEBIO or at excitebio.ca.
Somebody else that was at that NASDA meeting this week in Washington, D.C. was Federal Agriculture Minister Lawrence MacAulay. He was meeting and greeting and talking about the benefits of trade with Canada, especially from an agricultural perspective. I chatted with him shortly after his address to the delegates. Minister MacAulay, great to chat with you.
Good to be with you, Shaun. Good to be with you.
Okay, so you addressed the delegates from at the meeting this morning on Tuesday. What was your message to them?
Well, basically, my message really didn't change much from I wasn't there for that much of it, but anybody I heard speaking, or we had a number of meetings too, they're pretty much all on the same boat, just what tariffs would do and how damaging they would be to the Canadian and American economy. And talking about a price of food, it certainly would affect that pretty quick.
Yeah, and there's a lot of concern about food inflation in the U.S. Currently, for sure. What kind of response did you get from your message? Were you able to pick up some of the vibe in the room?
Oh, I tell you, but of course you have to realize I'm talking to people involved in agriculture. But I think, as you know, it's important that the sectors indicate how they feel about tariffs too. But I didn't certainly meet anybody that was supporting tariffs, and they were concerned about the effect they would have on the wonderful arrangement we have right across North America. And of course, food stability and all that is so vitally important. And of course, inflation is what they figure will happen immediately if the tariffs go in. But we are working hard to make sure it convince the people. Of course, anything we can say to government officials, we say, but also to make sure the congressmen and senators and the sectors in the states that deal so much with Canada, and without a doubt depend on Canadian markets too. As you know, a lot of states export into Canada too, so they don't want this trade disruption for sure. They know it'll hurt both Canada and the United States.
Yeah, and what we're seeing at this time is President Trump seems to disagree that it's been a good deal for the U.S., even though he was a part of negotiating that USMCA deal in his first administration. Is there kind of mixed messaging coming out of different lawmakers that you're talking to in the U.S. in that regard in terms of the value of trade?
Well, I mean, all I can tell you is what I heard, and we certainly got received very well from Republicans and Democrats. And the fact is, most people, or if not everybody that I've spoken to, understand just what an effect it would have. Look, we've had a great involvement, connection, totally intertwined with the Americans for a lot of years. And no matter if talking about agriculture or many, many other sectors, they fully understand. But again, I am fully aware what Trump has said, and he said it before, and we're just in hopes that this will not happen. Some feel that it probably will not happen, but nobody seems to know for sure.
I saw you met with the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Arkansas. Who were some of the other secretaries that you talked to on a one-on-one basis?
I talked to, of course, Tim McKinney. He's the CEO of NASDA. He was a pretty important player, of course, very involved and well connected with Rollins, and also well connected with Sonny Perdue. And I understand they're all pretty well in discussion, these people too. And Wes Ward, I met him, and I met a number of other secretaries from different states when, of course, this morning we're all of the same mind, I'd say, but then again, they seem to. My encouragement is that they will speak, or have the sectors at least speak to the people involved, and so they understand exactly what ramifications would come from this kind of a move.
Have you talked to USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins yet?
Not yet. I was in hopes that I would be able to meet. I was looking forward to it, but of course she's just been appointed, and I don't think everybody is looking to meet her, and I can understand that. But this is a pretty important meeting, this NASDA meeting, and they felt I should come, and I was wondering if I should or shouldn't. But it's obvious when I came here that we were very well received by the American secretaries, the state secretaries. I think that's very important, and they're pretty open to indicating how important the intertwining of Canada, U.S., Mexican, and particularly U.S., Canada, agricultural sector, and other sectors too, but of course I'm representing agriculture, and how important it is. And I'm very pleased I'm here and met as many people as I possibly could.
Any indication, Minister MacAulay? Of course, we've been hearing a lot about fentanyl and illegal migrants crossing the Canadian border into the U.S. That's kind of caused this tariff reprieve, so to speak. Canada having its action plan. Any agricultural trade related issues that you think or you have heard are in the ask, so to speak, from a U.S. perspective?
No, and on the fentanyl, of course, we indicate just exactly what the situation is. Less than 1%, I believe, of the illegal drugs that pass over the borders on our border. And they seem to understand that. But the people I'm talking to, but I'm not talking to Donald Trump, I'm talking to the secretaries of the different states. And they seem to understand that very small amount of illegal drugs or human movement on the borders, but they do appreciate the SAR and the drug SAR that we appointed, and all the financial moves at the border and the helicopters and that type of thing. We've talked about that, but honestly, it never was a heavy discussion, that part. And mostly we're of the same mind. But again, the man that's making the decision was not in any of the meetings I was at. But I'm just hopeful that all the people that we speak to would be able to try to explain to Trump the integrated nature of agriculture and how much this will affect, sample beef. I mean, they understand that some of them cross the border 5 or 6 times. And there's meat plants in Chicago and other areas that depend on Canadian beef, Canadian stock to keep their operations going. Some of them understood that there'd be processing plants closed if this took place. So I believe our message is getting across. But then, we've met a lot. Hundreds of thousands of piglets come from Canada to the U.S. That's brought up by the American Secretary of Agriculture themselves. They understand that too. I think it's important that we are able to explain it to them, but they're not the ones that makes the decision. But in the end, generally, politicians have to appease their people, and I'm just hopeful that we're able to convince the powers to be that how damaging this will be, and that's what my mission is.
Yeah, I know we're almost out of time. I just want to follow up with the USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins. When do you expect to have your first contact to cover? We know that you had a very strong relationship with former USDA Secretary in the first Trump administration, Sonny Perdue. You had a strong relationship. When do you expect to talk to Secretary Rollins?
Oh, well, of course, we've been in contact, and we were hoping to meet on this trip, but, it just wasn't possible. And I can understand that she would be swamped, plus getting on track as, in fact, what's involved. I mean, when you take over a position like that, you go through a lot of briefings, to say the least. Yeah. And she has to get up to scratch herself, and she, I suppose, not going to meet at least foreign politicians until she's in the business for a while. But of course, I want to meet her as soon as possible because she's pretty close to Donald Trump, and these people are important. And she understands agriculture. She was brought up on a farm, and she understands the business itself. So I hope she will be helpful.
So you have talked to, so you haven't met, but you said you have talked to her.
No,
Oh, okay, you have it. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that to make sure we got it.
But my office is in contact with her office, but no,
yes.
I have not. And I expect that, Shaun, she's going to, as I would too. I'm not going to jump in and meet foreign politicians. You just take over a new job. But anyhow, hopefully we'll meet soon. But we did meet a lot of people, and that's what. And of course, to emphasize, and I think it's. Look, they say it's important. I'm here, and I hope it is. But also the sectors are here. And I think the sectors indicating to the sectors they deal with down here how vitally important this is. And they understand that can have a big effect on politicians too. So we're doing everything we possibly can and open to any advice, but doing anything we can in order to get the information as to how devastating this could be.
Great stuff. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. Safe travels back to Ottawa, or your riding in PEI from Washington, D.C., and we'll talk to you again soon, Minister MacAulay.
Thanks, Shaun. I would certainly appreciate the appreciation they showed here for us to come, and thank you so much.
That was a conversation with Federal Ag Minister Lawrence MacAulay, fresh off the stage at the NASDA meeting. There's a lot of Canadians going from Canada to Washington, D.C. Overall flight traffic from Canada to the U.S. may be down, according to Air Canada and WestJet, but I think the flights to Washington, D.C. are quite busy. We've got more coming up here on Real Ag on the Weekend. You're listening to 650 CQM and 980 CJM.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's dynamic portfolio of seed and to contact your local territory manager.
One of the biggest threats to agriculture is our inability to get succession deals done at the rate and the pace that we need to. There are farms that are sold, and there's consolidation that does happen because succession deals can't be found. Now, what are some of the ways that we can get that succession planning started? Adam Pukalo was one of the speakers at Crop Connect, and he talked to Real Agriculture's Kelvin Hepner.
And pleased to be joined here in our RealAg studio area by Adam Pukalo of Ventum Financial, based in Winnipeg. Adam is also the Winnipeg chair with the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors. Certainly, farm advisors, we talk about it frequently, Adam, how much effort there is going into farm succession and how we have this massive transition that's happening across Canadian agriculture. Certainly an important role across the country right now.
Yeah, exactly, Kelvin. So today at the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors, we had a panel discussion just to give varying opinions to show the integrated approach that CAFA can bring for a lot of for a lot of farms. So today we went over a few different scenarios. So we had a farm operation. Again, this is fictitious, no real information here, but John and Lilia, John is 55 years old. They've been married for 30 years. They have 1,500 acres, and they're looking at that succession plan. How does that work with their 3 children? And one actually is going to be farming potentially. The 2 other ones, they're kind of thinking about it. They maybe went to technical school and things like that. So again, how does that work? How does does the scenario look in the advice? So, for example, from my perspective, I would be kind of talking about a roundtable discussion first off for a family. So now you might, again, use your lender, part of CAFA, or your accountant, your lawyer. So a roundtable discussion, I think, is very important. I would say if that's the one thing that anybody's kind of listening or viewing this would say is do a roundtable discussion with your family. And again, easier said than done with family dynamics and things like that. But there are people that can kind of help with that, whether through its CAFA or, again, who you already work with. And then I would say, again, 3 questions to kind of go over with a client like this that, again, they're talking about farm succession and kind of where to start. So are they ready to give up any of the decisions or control of the farm right now? So again, if you're 55, you might have 5, 10, 15 years still left. And that's where, do they want to give up some control now to the children? Do they just want to employ them? So kind of a few things. The second question I would kind of go into is about communication. So that's a huge thing, is are they ready to have a business partnership and communication rather than a parent-child? Because I often hear that as well, as the having that transition from a business to partner. That's really tough, I would say. And then the last one that, again, CAFA members really help out with is kind of talking about whether they want the farm to succeed and kind of carry on. So many people, I'm sure, work with third, fourth generation farms, but other times, they have kids that aren't going to carry on. So that's something to really kind of think about is, will that farm, I guess, do they want to carry on? And ultimately, what do the owner generation want? So again, CAFA is, we have so many different types of people, whether it's appraisers or insurance or just non-financial related as well too, to kind of help out farms with these types of succession questions and things like that.
Yeah, I think those are 3 great questions or key questions that it's good to simplify or break it down into those 3 questions as kind of a starting point. One question I have, Adam, is we have accountants, like you mentioned. There's appraisers, there's insurance, there's the lawyer side of things. There's so many different aspects to consider when it comes to farm succession, and sometimes one aspect takes a lead. Or I'm curious what you recommend in terms of balancing all those different interests in going through the process. How do you figure out who to lean on most or who to lean on when in terms of those different advisory services?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, it sounds like a priority question. Like, how do you prioritize what to do first? Well,
do we do this for tax reasons? Do we do it for family reasons? Do we do it for legal reasons? Like, there's just different interests, and I guess that comes back to some of those questions you were asking.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think the number one thing is the most natural thing that comes to your mind. So if I were to ask you that question, what comes to your mind first? If it's family, then we should be talking about family first and kind of going through that. So I think it'd be, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Because that's the most natural thing. And I'm sure everybody's kind of heard the quote before, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. But Benjamin Graham, right? So Benjamin Franklin, sorry. Benjamin Graham's a famous investor. That's why it comes to my mind. But I would say kind of most naturally what comes to your mind, that's when you can prioritize it. Now, again, whatever professional you're talking to, if it's an accountant, they might talk about that a little bit more in the investment or legal, but it obviously all kind of works together.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of Crop Connect here, Adam. Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks, Calvin.
Lots happening always in the world of agriculture. If you do have some thoughts, some comments, maybe you got some strong opinions, I would like to hear from you, Real Ag on the Weekend audience. All you have to do is send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, and make sure you go to realagriculture.com to find all of the other stuff that we didn't cover here today on the show. Videos, podcasts, written content, tons of stuff for you to consume. Please check it out. And thank you so much for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag on the Weekend. Chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.